The Windows Phone. Not too long ago did I become part of the 1%, the elite, the unique, the Windows Phone user. Yeah, I know, I'm late to the party. With Microsoft being quiet on the future of Windows Phone, no new hardware as of recent, and nothing but rumors to follow, it's hard to stay confident that the Windows Phone is going to last. Truth is, we don't know at this point. And look, I was never attracted to the Windows Phone. All this talk about the app gap, processor and RAM specifications that didn't seem very aggressive on paper, it never quite felt like an option to ever look at. That was until my cheap doogee Android phone died for the last time. I needed a phone quick for an upcoming job interview. A good friend lent me his old Lumia 930. I got hooked. Simple, solid design, intuitive OS, sleek, fast interface. It was the first time I grabbed the phone and just felt, well, wowed. And with that, I went out and found a used 920 for about 30 euros and I loaded Windows 10 on it. Right now it's my primary phone. Before I returned the 930, I lent it to my wife. Same thing, it just worked. And as someone who relies on it for the job, it was perfect. I'll tell you her story. She had an iPhone 5. Got really frustrated being tied down to iTunes for basic file transfers. Traded it in for a Samsung Galaxy S5. It was okay, but of course it did have its issues, with the inclusion of massive bloatware slowing the phone down from the get-go, battery drain issues, and the odd behavior and occasional instability. But for the most part, it was usable. I personally had recommended jumping to a slimmed down community ROM, but you gotta remember, most consumers aren't really willing to do so, especially while the phone is still under support. Anyway, as I said, the phone was in general fine with no major issues that would push for a change. But after noticing the nice intricate style of the Asus Zenfone 2, she was able to trade the Samsung S5 with an Asus Zenfone 2. Similar experience. Minor issues over time, yet good enough. But then the 930 comes along and we sell off the Zenfone 2, grabbing a much cheaper 930 at about 70 euros while pocketing the difference. So what is it about these phones? Let's take a look. You'll notice that we've got protective covers on both, for two reasons. One, it dampens energy when dropped. Two, these phones are super smooth, especially with the 920. It just wants to slide out of your hands. Seems like most phones are this way anyway. With covers costing only about €1, it's well worth it. We also have some tempered glass screen protectors on it. They do look ugly. Turns out the Lumia screen is slightly curved, which normally looks fantastic, but it doesn't fit well with glass screen protectors, ending up gathering dust around the edges and not fitting perfectly. The glass on the 920 is Gorilla Glass 2, the glass on the 930 is Gorilla Glass 3. So for most, you probably don't need the glass screen protector. But for us, especially for me and my use, in my experience, spending that extra euro is well worth it. In the end, it all depends on how well you treat your gadgets. Plastic protectors should stick on fine if you're going to go that route. The screen itself is a 4.5-inch IPS LCD screen on the 920. Nice, clear, vibrant colors. Pure Review Tech drops LCD response time down to 9 milliseconds, reducing motion blur, and it has great contrast. Overall, a pretty good screen, but the 930 is where it's at. Incredibly high contrast, super crisp, full HD AMOLED 5-inch screen. The screen technology shines with the Windows Phone's vibrant colors and high contrast interface. The phones themselves are a bit thicker than today's phones, with the 920 being 10.7mm and the 930 being 9.8mm thick. I find this still to be a very comfortable size. The 920 is a nice vibrant red color, while the 930 we have in the standard black. These phones do come in a variety of colors. Both of the phones have the standard 4-button layout on the right side, volume up, down, on-off button, and a dedicated camera button that can be pressed halfway to focus. And talking about the camera, that's where the Lumias have always shined. Nokia's floating lens hardware, along with the addition of software-based stabilization, means that you're going to have very crisp photos and very smooth video footage. The 920 comes with an 8-megapixel camera that has excellent optics, takes very clean photos, and the dual LED flash gives adequate lighting. Recording is at 1080p. Most of the videos right now on this channel are actually recorded with this Lumia 920. The 930 ups it quite a bit with its 20-megapixel camera and ability to shoot 4K videos. You'll notice that the series of videos, Adventures of RAM CPU, are at times recorded at 4K with this camera. The 930 is also able to record up to 120 frames per second at lower resolution of 720p. As a little note, in this video of the 920 is recorded with the 930 and vice versa. The camera app on both phones allows for manual control of white balance, ISO sensitivity, shutter speed, and exposure compensation. This allows for a lot of control in your photos, while allowing for nice nice creative control in videos, especially for what is a smartphone. Both phones are LTE capable, with the 920 limited to Cat3 LTE at 100 megabits and the Lumia 930 at Cat4 LTE at 150 megabits. Now look, I'm all for improving technology and faster speeds, but honestly, for most users, you're not going to be able to tell the difference day in and day out. Anyway, the tech is there, so you should be able to get decent speeds if you want it. Battery life is good. Of course, these are old phones. We find that both phones do about half a day to a day, depending on the charge, which I think is quite reasonable. At their age, at some point, we're likely going to have to swap out the battery, but even despite having an internal battery, Lumias tend to be quite simple to take apart and repair. Both of these phones have an array of 3 microphones that help keep audio clear. I've recorded this audio on the Lumia. Speakers, they're loud enough on the 930, and on the 920 with its 2 speakers can actually get a little bit too loud, the loudest I've ever witnessed on a smartphone. The 920 uses a micro SIM, the 930 uses an even smaller nano SIM. Both have 32 gigabytes of internal storage, which I think is plenty for most of us, especially since I imagine a lot of people end up offloading their photos and videos elsewhere to the cloud, to their local computer, external hard drive, whatever. Both have wireless charging on the QI standard, a little more convenient than I had initially expected. But now let's get to the processor and the RAM. And here's where I have to begin by saying, in my opinion, as long as the experience is fluid, the specs are hard to judge on their own. The 930 has a Snapdragon S4 with 1 gig of RAM, and the 930 has a Snapdragon 800 with 2 gigs of RAM. Now when you look at these specs and you compare them with Android phones that have faster processors and more RAM, it doesn't look too appealing. But plain and simple, Windows Mobile 10 and its apps are built more efficiently, and the OS by default is not shipped with bloat. I mean, we've used other Android phones with more RAM, with faster processors, yet every time they didn't quite feel as fast when you'd use it. And I don't get that with the Windows Phone. Not on the 930, not on the 920. And this is what changed my mind on specs. It really doesn't matter if you have the best hardware in town if it doesn't feel fast. It's the reason why Apple always gets away with less. And yeah, side by side, the 930 outperforms the 920 in every single way. I mean, it's a phone released in 2014 versus a phone released in 2012. But come on, for a 5-year-old phone, the 920 still holds its own. And that's what amazes me, the consistent experience. Of course, from doing a little research and reading, it turns out it wasn't always this way. In its infancy, the Windows 10 mobile OS was buggy. But now, today, look, the 920 isn't even supposed to support Windows 10 mobile, but it's solid. It just doesn't crash, it works. So what about the apps? The app gap, of course. It's one of the primary reasons that people stay away. And at first, before getting the phone, I always thought it would bother me, until I just realized I don't use that many apps. Any app that Microsoft provides on their platform works fast and is always a great experience. Most other apps seem fine as well. Do keep in mind you're not going to find Google apps. No Hangouts, no Google Maps. Google not only didn't port their apps to the platform, they actively sought to prevent it. But despite that, Outlook works fine with Gmail, and alternatives for chat like WhatsApp and Skype are out there. Facebook and Messenger, these apps are slow to load, which is pretty crummy. They do work, it's not slow enough to keep me away. Here's the thing, we might not even need apps in the future. There's a general trend towards web apps. I think the industry is starting to notice that not everybody is upgrading their phone right away. I think that you'll find today that if an app doesn't exist in the store, there's probably a website to take its place. Apart from this, across Windows platforms, there is Continuum, which has the promise of reeling in more developers back into the platform. So as an app is developed for Xbox, HoloLens, or desktop, it's not a stretch to make it available for the Windows Phone. Do take the app gap for what it is. I know that for some, it's going to be an impossible hurdle. If that one app that you absolutely need is not there and you can't use it, you might not be able to make the switch. But for me, it turned out to be a non-issue. I mean, in the end, who needs 100 calculator apps in the web store? And that'll be all for this review. Right now, Lumia phones, Windows phones, are as cheap as they ever will be. Part of this is because the future is unknown. Because of the Windows operating system life cycles, do expect the OS to be supported for a little while longer. Otherwise, I found that the 920 and the 930 are very excellent phones and probably meet the needs of most people. I do hope you enjoyed the review. If you did, go ahead and hit that like button. If you didn't, hit dislike. Otherwise, subscribe, and wherever you are in the world, good day, good night, good morning, bye-bye.